Right, well, let's get started for tonight's class. We're on the third class of healing anxiety and depression. And the whole premise of this course is that from Buddhist psychology, it is possible to completely heal ourselves of anxiety, depression, and not only that, but many of the different states of unhappiness and all of the different disturbing emotions that cause these symptoms of unhappiness. So it is possible to completely heal ourselves. We don't just have to get to a level where we can just make do during our life and that'll do. From a Buddhist point of view, we can completely remove all of suffering and all of the causes of suffering. And that's actually how to do it, to remove the causes. So it's definitely possible to remove all of the disturbing emotions that cause anxiety and depression and stress and boredom, restlessness, all of those things. And it's possible to cultivate all of our inner qualities and then naturally experience greater well-being all the way up to full emotional freedom, enlightenment, Buddhahood. The good thing about this course is you don't have to be a Buddhist or religious for it to be beneficial, because Buddhist psychology really shares the Buddha's insights into human nature. So it's cross-cultural, it's cross-generational. There are some universal things that we can benefit from. So I'm just going to start the screen share now, and we can have a look at what we've already covered just very quickly in this course so far. So the main thing that we looked at in the first class was how depression and anxiety are the pain system of the mind. So don't shoot the messenger. They are the messenger. They indicate that something's gone wrong, that there is some harm being done somewhere. They're like a traumatic response to something. And rather than just get rid of the traumatic response, we've got to look at what caused it. And so it's really important to be able to recognize what depression and anxiety are indicating, what they're showing us. And just like our physical pain system, it's not pleasant when we have a pain, when we have a sore back or a stomach ache or a fever, but it indicates something's wrong, and it's actually our body already trying to heal ourselves, already in the healing process. We've also looked at how all of the disturbing states of mind and all of those unhappy states of stress, grief, sadness, all of those disturbing emotions, they can be removed because they're not one with the mind. Our mind by nature is fundamentally clear. So the analogy is like the sky. The sky is naturally clear. There may be a whole lot of rubbish and pollution, and today a few clouds and overcast, but they don't break the nature of the sky. They don't permanently stain the sky, and they can be removed. The tricky thing is, how do we recognize what's a disturbing emotion and what's a good quality? Because it's not immediately obvious. If it was immediately obvious, we would have removed those disturbing emotions by now. We wouldn't be so bullied and under the sway of them. So what I have done is put together some most wanted posters, because these are like the inner criminals, the inner terrorists that cause a huge amount of damage to our own well-being, and then because we act under the influence of these disturbing emotions, then we harm others as well. So the most wanted posters. The first one, ignorance. So ignorance or confusion, not just general ignorance, which isn't actually an affliction, but ignorance about the nature of our mind and about how our mind works and how the disturbing emotions work, and ignorance about how we interrelate with the world, how we're connected. And because we have confusion about this, then we don't know how to heal ourselves, we don't know how to communicate, we don't know how to act. It doesn't come naturally because it's not obvious. And then we end up blaming ourselves and feeling terribly demoralized and guilty and bad. And we make all these judgments on ourselves. And all of this stems from ignorance. Also counted as an affliction is deluded doubt, meaning unexamined doubt. Doubts where we just go, we're really ambivalent and we don't go further. And what it does is it hampers us. It stops us in our tracks, and we can be stagnant for years and decades if we have these niggling thoughts in the background, but we haven't dealt with them. And mistaken views, intellectually held views, ideas, opinions that may make us feel better in the short term. They justify our fears or our prejudices, but in the long term cause harm. And they're counted as wrong views because they're out of step with reality. It's not someone's opinion, this is right or this is wrong. So why I've depicted it as kernel wrong views, how Nazism or any form of ism like that, whilst trying to protect one bunch of people, incredibly destructive and harmful to another bunch of people. And that kind of harm being out of step with reality, just made up, just a wrong view. And then last week we looked at pride, depicted as Professor Pride. So holding an inflated opinion of ourselves, or recognizing, it could even be recognizing a quality in ourselves, but therefore feeling that we're better than others. So instead of going, wow, I'm really accomplished at whatever task it is, why don't I share it with others? So therefore I'm better than you. So it's this puffed up feeling, and it's a way of making ourselves feel special. The problem, of course, with pride, when we feel special and different from others, suddenly we feel alienated, lonely, intimidated. So for those of you who were here last week, was anyone here last week? Did you have a look at the reflection sheets? There were, some of the questions were about the 6 times of negative pride and recognizing if they're at play in our own personality, which all of them were at play in my own personality, which is a bit shocking to me. And then the 4 positive prides, of which we hardly cultivate at all. So I don't know if any of you were here last week. You can put something in the chat, how you went. The positive prides, pride in being a human being, the kind of, all of the skills and abilities we have as a human being, the choices we can make. Pride in our potential to be able to attain Buddhahood or freedom from all of the afflictive emotions. Pride in our positive actions, how we communicate and how we treat others, what we do. And pride like a real confidence that we can destroy delusion. So how many of these do we naturally feel or cultivate? A positive pride. So in a way, if we haven't been cultivating those things, then no wonder we rely on others for appreciating us or making us feel that we're worthwhile. And no wonder we keep on becoming deflated and demoralized. I'm just going to check if anyone's written in the chat. Nobody's written in the chat. Well, if you haven't had a look at the homework, the other thing I'd like you to put in the chat is, what skills do you have that you can share with others? So something about you, your personality, that you're really good at, that you can share with others. Put in the chat. Oh, Sandra raised her hand. Can you, oh, I'm not sure how to do that while the screen share's on. Type something in there for me. Oh, I don't know how to use any of the other controls. How about I'm just going to stop the share for a moment and see if I can. Oh, here we go. Right. Cooking. Yes, you're right. And I personally have appreciated someone taking pity on my lack of cooking skills and taking me under their wing and going, Miffi, I'm going to show you 2 things to cook and how to do it. And they showed me, and that's how come I'm not malnourished. Because I can tell you what, it didn't come naturally. So it's a skill that can actually keep people alive. And yes, it's also a social skill of being able to share. Or Sandra, did you mean that you had some social skills? Because that's another one. Yes, it invites sharing. In any kind of conversation or relationship, you just need one person to have the social skills and they can help the other one along. So that's another one. If you sense that somebody is shy, then you can wear the shyness for both of you and help them along. What else? Anybody else? Any other skills? Come on, put them in the chat. What are the skills that you have that you share with others? Perseverance and motivation. Yes, that's right. So again, it just takes one person, even in a group, to have motivation, to have a sense of confidence and perseverance, and then everyone will just come in on your slipstream. You can help motivate others. You can help direct others in a positive way. So it just takes one person, and then it can change the vibe of the whole group. What else? Anything else? Marcella, what skills do you have? I know you've got heaps, but it's, can you recognize them? Can you have, as if you were a reporter reporting on what kind of human being you are? Here are your skills and qualities and abilities. Oh yes, teamwork. Ian, that's a big one. That doesn't necessarily come easily either. I've worked in lots of teams and boy, it's challenging. So if you've got teamwork already, you've got friends. Marstella's still thinking. I know it's challenging, isn't it? So another way that you can get at this, of something to be genuinely proud about as a positive pride, Marcella, is what are your friends like about you? Yeah, Ian, it does take time to build teamwork. It does, that's right, because it takes human interaction and for people to trust you and to know your motivation as well. Oh, good. Thank you, Marcella. So a good listener. And that one also incredibly important, because many times when we're feeling anxious or depressed or any other kind of distress, we don't necessarily want someone to fix it for us. We just want someone to hear us, to understand us. We just need to share it. It's like sharing the burden, isn't it? And so that's right, a willingness to share. And so if you can be the one who listens, then you lighten the burden for others, and that's incredibly beneficial. Yeah, we can feel that we absorb that burden. That happens when we have the empathy for them and know where to go with it. So in the Buddhist psychology, there's 2 ways that we can go with it. One is that we can develop a genuine love of wishing them to be really happy. And that's an activity in our mind. So we get to do something, and the moment we do something, then we have our agency back again. The moment we're able to do something in a situation, we get our energy back. The other way that we can go is by generating compassion. So not just empathy, not just feeling for others, but then taking a sense of care and responsibility for them. And so again, it's an activity, it's a doing. So we've gone from just feeling to doing. And then that way we don't burn out and we don't absorb the burden. So we're going to have a look today, once we set the motivation, we're going to have a look at how to do one of those things, which is how to generate loving kindness. I'm just going to get back to the screen share. And thank you everyone for your input. I appreciate we can feel shy even if we're not face to face. So let's set the motivation. We can think we're here for ourselves and for others. So the motivation for oneself, it might be a particular thing that is going on with us, a particular issue, just dealing with the lockdown, the extended coronavirus lockdown, all the difficulties associated with that and all the stresses. But also we can recognize so many people in exactly the same situation as us. So we can do this class for them too. That everything that we go through we'll be able to use to help not just ourselves, but to help others. How amazing it is when someone knows where we're coming from and can share their experience and help us out. And so the same, we too can be that person for others. And we can also expand our motivation out. We can think that by looking within, working on our own mind, developing our positive qualities and personality traits, we can become a positive force in the world, bring happiness and peace to everyone around us. The kind of benefit that we experience won't be limited just to us, but we'll be able to positively affect everybody. So we can really set our motivation as an incentive for doing this inner work, that we'll be able to bring happiness to everyone around us. We'll be able to stop harming them, and we'll be able to contribute to global peace and harmony by starting right now. And that way we can actually affect the whole world. So with this altruistic motivation, let's have a look what we'll talk about tonight. Tonight's topics, well, the difference between desirous attachment and love. So I've depicted it as, you know, a heart, but also the dagger through the heart. And it's interesting that when we talk about love, it's so often associated with pain, with that dagger through the heart as well. So there is a difference between the craving desirous attachment and love or loving kindness. In understanding this, we're going to have a look at how attachment arises blow by blow, everything that leads to it. Because if we can figure out how it arises, then we can start dismantling it. It'll also explain how come attachment has such a grip on us, why it's so difficult. We're going to have a look at how attachment cheats us of enjoying our day-to-day life. It cheats us of satisfaction, of peace and calm. Also, attachment results in so many frustrations and anxieties, also cheating us of that inner calm that we so crave for. And then we're going to have a look at antidotes to attachment. If we can put in the antidotes, then we can really enjoy life. It seems ironic, doesn't it? But it's attachment, it's that pain of attachment that stops us enjoying the vast, incredible fortune that we have. The wonderful thing is that with the antidotes to attachment, it's a universal thing. The problems of attachment are universal, and the solution is universal, relevant to all cultures, all ages. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to discover it for ourselves. What is it? The solution is already there. Thank goodness for that. So let's have a look. First off, what attachment is. And I've done a most wanted poster for attachment. Angelina attachment. Very gorgeous. And I've depicted attachment as an air hostess. And there's a reason for that. Because attachment, they say psychologically, attachment is with us all the time, travels with us all the time. So it's not just, say, a terrorist that gets on the plane and gets off again. Attachment is like the air hostess. It's kind of with us, our companion, and appears very nice at first. appears beneficial when it first arises. So when attachment first arises, it feels good. It's that feeling of anticipation. We're really looking forward to something. So at first it feels nice. But actually, attachment is a terrorist in disguise, and it's a very good disguise. So this is why I've got this most wanted poster like this, a little bit silly so that we can remember it. When attachment arises, it arises in two stages. At first, there's the mind of attachment that superimposes all sorts of things onto the object that are out of step with reality. And then there's clinging or grasping at it, wanting to have that object. So let's have a look first at the definition. So attachment does three things. First off, it exaggerates all of the good characteristics that may be there. So undoubtedly, things have good characteristics and we relate with them, and they, you know, we think, oh, that's nice. That's not an affliction. It's not necessarily out of step with reality, but what attachment does is it exaggerates the importance of it, or exaggerates, for instance, if you've wanted children, there's this huge longing to have children. And in that is this exaggeration of thinking, oh, all of these wonderful things will come my way when I have children. My life will be enriched. I will have meaning. And so they'll bring everlasting happiness and never unhappiness. It will solve all of my problems about what am I going to do with my life. So there is a degree in there that's true, but it's exaggerated in that if you do manage to have children, those issues are still there. We might have a wish to go on a holiday. And we think about, oh, we can do this, we can do that, and it's going to be so fantastic and excellent. But then, as they say, wherever you go on holiday, there you are. So you've gone on holiday, you've got all those wonderful things, but it's still, you have your issues within you. So while going on a holiday may actually lessen the stress, if we have these issues within us and haven't dealt with them, we still have them. So the holiday won't fix it. Having the money won't fix it. Having the children won't fix it. So we exaggerate positive characteristics that are there and expect a lot more from them. So of course, you know, if you do manage to have children, and then even if they're the best kids in the world and they give you all sorts of satisfaction, then they leave home, and then all of those issues that were there before having children come back again. Okay, so then the next one, we project attributes onto an object that are not there. So this is why I've put Angelina attachment as being pretty, because what we do without even knowing it, if someone is good looking, we automatically think they're a good person. We expect them to be a good person, kind, trustworthy. If someone looks good and handsome, we expect them to be a good person. If we thought about it for a second, we wouldn't, but it's there instinctually. So many people get ripped off by con artists because if someone's wearing a suit, they must be legit. If someone's well-spoken, they must be, and well-mannered, they must be good inside as well. Whereas they could be a fraudster, they could be doing all sorts of things behind your back, but because they present a nice face, and we believe it. Teenagers think if it's on Facebook, or not even just teenagers, heaps of people, if it's on Facebook, it must be true. You know, if you got it on the email and it sounds like an authoritative voice, it must be true. I better click on that link and see. So we get caught out all the time, not because we're stupid. It's not because we're stupid. It's because we believe the appearances, and the appearance looks legit. And so immediately, without even a second's delay, we believe it. So one time when I saw a There was an article about Naomi Campbell throwing a tantrum on the plane and being thrown off the plane. And how come? How come? I mean, heaps of people throw tantrums that are thrown off the plane, but it's because she was beautiful. How could a beautiful person act so badly? It made the news because we don't expect it. We expect the amount of outside beauty matches the inside beauty. So we project attributes that are not there, and then the third one, we're biased. We just see the good qualities. So this one happens most of the time when we're anticipating something. So we're thinking about getting a dinner, or we're thinking about buying a new phone or a computer, and we think about all the good things about it. And it's very difficult to think of anything that could go wrong about it. And the more we read about the good things about it, the more we go, yep, that's the one, how fantastic, I can't wait. And then you get your brand shiny new, whatever it is, back home again, turn it on, and oh my gosh, now I have to install an operating system and virus software, and oh my God, passwords, and I've got to sign up to Google and this and that. No one told me about that. Well, I mean, the thing is that lots of people did. It was right there in front of us, but it's almost impossible to see the things that aren't so good when we're so excited by the good things. Yeah, so then once you get the thing, then you have to look after it, and it gets a bit tricky. So the degree of suffering that we have is directly proportionate to the degree of attachment. Absolutely matches. So if we look at how much dissatisfaction and suffering and stress that we have in our life, that is directly proportionate to the amount of attachment we have. And it's so tricky because we don't even know we have attachment, because it's with us all the time. And when things are going relatively okay, it feels okay. While we're in the anticipation phase, it feels okay. It's just later on when the thing reveals its nature that we get disappointed. And then we think something's gone wrong. So I remember one lady who was coming here to class, and she was sitting right here in the Gompa, right in front of me, just on the left there. And she said, this is my favorite spot in the Gompa. And she loves her favorite spot. And then all the way through the class, she's like, Miffi, can you turn the air conditioning off? It's blowing right at me. Or do you have a different kind of cushion? This one's really uncomfortable. Is there a way that I can make the desk a bit higher because I can't seem to write on it properly? And so everything about the spot was actually wrong. So this is what attachment does. It goes, this is my perfect spot. It's my favorite spot. If only I could change the air temperature, the size of the cushion, the fact that the lighting's no good. Da, 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 da. In fact, there was all these things wrong with it. It was the coldest spot in the room. It was the one spot where the air conditioning blew directly. It was on the floor, not a chair. All of these things. So this is the tricky thing with attachment. It goes, it's perfect, but blah, 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 and maybe we can fix those things. And we don't see that it comes together. So that's the biased mind. So it's funny in a story like that, but this also happens with people, with relationships. We think they're perfect, just these things, but we can fix that. And we have these expectations that we can. And then we have the suffering later. So hopefully by now you can start seeing that it's not the person that's the problem, or the spot there in the Gompa that's the problem. It's how we exaggerate things, how we have expectations, and how we're biased, that later on we get disappointed. That's the problem. So, following attachment. Now I have a little thing to read to you from Chopten Gyatso from The Perfect Mirror. This one. You can get it as an ebook. He says, if we were asked to make a list of our problems, most of us would soon fill a page with complaints, many of which would include a lack of fulfillment of our desires. But how many of us would list desire itself as a problem? Buddha taught that desire is one of our greatest problems. Desire is the state of mind that craves pleasure and wants to possess a particular object of pleasure, either another person or a material thing, as our own. Desire exaggerates the pleasant qualities of the object so it seems to be much better than it actually is. And desire is blind to any negative qualities. When we're attracted to a particular person, desire makes them appear to be the most beautiful person in the world. Their body is perfect, their voice, their clothes, everything about them is blessed with a certain magic. Physically, we desire their body. Mentally, we crave their recognition of us as an individual. We need their smiles and their love to confirm that we are a good and lovable person. At night and during the day, we cannot stop thinking about them, and it's impossible to concentrate on study or anything else. And if our friends point out bad qualities of the person we desire, we reject their advice. We simply cannot see any faults. But desire is not happiness. Desire is an agitated, unhappy state of mind, which believes that if we do not get what we want, then we cannot be happy. When our desire is unfulfilled, we cannot eat, we become irritable, we cannot relax or be friendly with our family, we hate life, we even hate ourselves. If we do finally obtain the object of our desire, we soon become disenchanted because we realize the object is not as good as we thought it was. Or we become bored and dissatisfied and start looking around for something or someone else. Okay, so there is a difference between desire, desirous attachment, and happiness. And desirous attachment is not happiness. So this attachment or desire is like this thirst. And whilst we're craving and thirsty and anticipating something, it feels okay. And just like with drinking salt water, at first it feels cool and it moistens our mouth, but then later on we have even more craving. The more we follow craving, the more we follow our desirous attachment, the more dissatisfied we become, not the more satisfied. We don't become more content. We become tighter and tighter, more anxious, more dissatisfied, more craving, just like drinking salt water. So on a conventional level, things are pleasant or unpleasant. We like some things, we don't like other things. But what the mind of attachment or desire does is builds that up to have that object exist in an unrealistic, exaggerated type of way. And then desirous attachment proper, this kind of craving, is our clinging or being fixated with it. So it might be with external things, gadgets, objects, food, dinner. It might be fame, having people have a particular idea about us, recognition, craving for the recognition of others. It might be our attachment to ideas. No, it's this way. I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket and believe in this way, and then everything will turn out okay. So what's the difference between genuine enjoyment or genuine love and attachment? That attachment, even though it feels good at first, later on it reveals its true nature. So for instance, champagne. So attachment goes, oh, wonderful, wonderful champagne. And it thinks that the happiness lies in the object out there. And if I had some, I'd be happy. And so we have some champagne and we go, great, that was great. If I have more, I'll be even happier. So have another one. And then fantastic. Things are looking up. I'll have another one and be triple my happiness, and so on. And then, surprise, surprise, later on, oh my God, hangover. It's always a surprise, isn't it? We're not drinking that second glass going, I am going to be so hungover tomorrow. Well, we might be, but we're just going, la, 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 think about that later. And then later on, it reveals its true nature. And then we're shocked. We can't believe it's that bad. Oh my gosh, I drink that much. So, you know, I got very familiar about this when I was an alcoholic all those years ago, and was able to see that it is like drinking salt water. The happiness does not come from out there. Now, the other thing, love, so-called love, turns to hate when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So this is summed up by Venerable Rabina. So many times she said, hate, it comes from, you know, how come it flips over like that in relationships is because of the attachment. So many times we have love and attachment mixed up, and we think we love somebody, and then how many times we hear about domestic violence. And so the perpetrator, usually the guy, but you know, the perpetrator feels that they love the person, but the moment the person doesn't measure up to those expectations or doesn't act in a way that is pleasant to that person, it turns to hate. It's unbearable. So now, instead of the happiness coming from the person, now the unhappiness, the unbearable, comes from the person. So you want to destroy them. So love turns to hate when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So the degree that we hate our partner, our exes, the degree that we hate them was the degree of attachment that we had. It wasn't love. It's not that we had love and now we don't love them anymore. That was attachment. If you cannot stand them at all, then it was all attachment. So we can actually tell how much we genuinely cared, were affectionate towards somebody by looking at our exes and go, how do I feel about them now? So we may not get on with them on a superficial level. We may not bring out the best in each other, but you may still deeply care about them. But, you know, if you heard something terrible happen to them, you wouldn't be happy. You'd feel for them. You'd wish them the best, even though you may not be able to see them day to day. So we can really gauge how that is. It also kind of explains why we have so much domestic violence, because most of us have love and attachment completely mixed up together and don't actually even know how to love someone or how to whittle away the attachment, how to unpick it. So let's see how attachment arises and how we can unpick it so it doesn't have to flip over to hatred when it reveals the rest of the story. When we get the rest of the story, the person isn't perfect or the thing isn't perfect. So how come we just keep on drinking that salt water and becoming more and more thirsty? Why do we get it so wrong? We need to be able to understand the progression, and the progression happens really fast, almost in a split second, but we can slow it down and have a look. So the very first thing, the kind of the driver of it, is what's called grasping at true existence. And a colloquial way of thinking about this is we just judge a book by its cover. How things first appear to us, people, food, a book, a house, a job, how it first appears, we believe it to be true. We believe it to be the whole story. We can't see anything else. So instead of going, aha, that's how it looks now, I wonder how it's going to be in a while, or I wonder what the rest of the story is, we just go, no, it's this. It's great. Now, we don't do this on purpose. This is instinctual. Everything that we see, everyone that we interact with, we think that's how they are. Pretty much our first impressions dominate, And because of that, we regard that person or that thing as the cause of our happiness. So what happens, we have this initial perception and then we believe it to be true and we believe it to be the whole story. And not only that, but because of that, we exaggerate. So because we've just got the pleasant side of the story, then we fixate on that and we start thinking it's even better than that. It's gonna last for even longer. We project all sorts of other expectations onto it. We can't see any faults. So we have the exaggeration, the bias, and the projections. And it happens because we've believed that first appearance. We've seen Angelina attachment. She looks good. She is good. And I want her. So then, because it's so fantastic, then clinging and grasping, wanting to possess the object is the natural next thing. We want that thing because it's going to bring us all this happiness. We become almost absorbed into the object, can't think about anything else. So I remember when I was, had my first crushes when I was little, I just found them unbearable because of this, because my mind was no longer my own. I was completely obsessed and I couldn't do anything about it. And very quickly I'd go from having a crush on someone to just hating them because of the torment that I was going through. And the poor person never even knew, didn't know what hit him. So we go to this wanting to possess the object, wanting to get the object, and it's okay if it works out, but if we can't immediately get that object, because now we're so invested in it, we end up doing things that we regret. So we may be less than honest. We may have an affair. We may steal to get what we want. We do all sorts of destructive or harmful actions, activities, and we communicate in a destructive way or a not so honest way. We might act really impulsively and then regret it later on. You know, how many times do people have an affair with their best mates, you know, wife or husband? No one sets out to ruin your best friend's, you know, your relationship with your best friend, and yet it happens again and again and again. Why? Because we just act impulsively. Why do we act impulsively? Because we're completely filled with grasping and clinging. Why? Because we've exaggerated all of the good qualities. And why? Because we think our happiness comes from out there, from that thing. So you can see it's this chain reaction. Anyway, so we do these destructive, harmful actions, and then that opens the door to all sorts of other disturbing emotions. So once this process has started, then anybody else has the thing that we want, we're jealous. We start getting really possessive. What if I lose the thing that I have? We start being riven with anxiety instead of enjoying what we have. Now we're just anxious all the time. What if it breaks? What if it gets dirty? What if it gets scratched? Busted, you know, drop your phone down the toilet, all of those things. So then all of these other disturbing emotions, afflictive states of mind just come crowding in. So when we first, say, fall in love with someone, we don't expect that we're going to end up being jealous and possessive and angry and violent and all of those things. But this kind of trajectory happens, and it happens because of the nature of attachment. There are countless TV shows and movies about this very thing, aren't they? It's infinitely fascinating. So we have all these other disturbing states of mind arise, and mostly we think we cannot be happy without that object, without that thing. So we have to be with the person all the time. We can't bear it when we're not with them. We need them to constantly respond to us. And if it breaks or if they leave us, then we're devastated. And we think we cannot be happy without them. So I remember at the end of various breakups, I would be just like this picture. I'd just be, it's the end of the world. And people say, oh, time heals all wounds. But it does. Time does heal all wounds. But we're really shocked when things change, or when we no longer have that object. And this feeds into, again, that initial mistake that we've made, the grasping at true existence. So then we think, well, we can't have that object, or that object's no longer doing it for me. I'm going to get another one. And so again, our eye alights on something and we go, this is the one, this will do it. And we, because it appears good and it looks like it's making me happy, then I want it. And again, this whole cycle comes, and then we're disappointed again. And we go, oh no, it wasn't. It must have been that that person wasn't good enough. I'll find a better person. Or in my case, it just must have been cheap and nasty champagne. I'll buy more expensive champagne and I won't get the hangover. So it goes around and again and again. It's a really vicious circle. So do you have any questions about this? Anything at all? Put it in the chat. I hope it makes sense. Let me just get this one up. Okay. Yeah, well, some people marry so many times, that's right. And each time you really think this will be the one. So there's such hope there. And it's not that, you're a loser. It's just that the nature of attachment means that it is like drinking salt water. You can't find the satisfaction from that person. And it's a real tragedy if you think it does come from that person. Because, one day we're going to be so old that we can't marry anybody, or maybe somebody doesn't want to marry us, or maybe we just, we start thinking there's something really wrong with us, but there's something wrong with our attitude. So all the way we can kind of wind it back. So that feeling of, I can't be happy without them, we can just at least recognize that's not true, because the happiness doesn't come from them. It's a state of mind. It comes from us. Then we can start whittling away those disturbing emotions. We can start controlling our behavior. And then we can start looking at the nature of the attachment itself and how it tells us lies, all the way back to that grasping an inherent existence. Attachment tells us that thing is perfect. It's a big mistake. So here's a little story about cake. So this is from Buddhism for Beginners by Thupten Chodron. And someone's asked her, but wouldn't life be boring without attachment? And I really relate to that, because one of my previous boyfriends, that was his biggest fear, that one day he would have no desire, because desire was what motivated him. And he thought his whole life would be boring without it. He was also one of the most unhappy people I've ever known. So, it kind of makes sense. Anyway, Venerable Chodron says, no, in fact, it's attachment that makes us restless and prevents us from enjoying things. It's the attachment that prevents us from enjoying things. For example, suppose we are attached to chocolate cake. Even while we're eating it, we're not tasting it and enjoying it completely. We're usually either criticizing ourselves for eating something fattening, comparing the taste of this chocolate cake to other cakes we've eaten in the past, or planning how to get another piece. In any case, we're not really experiencing the chocolate cake in the present. On the other hand, without attachment, we can think clearly about whether we want to eat the cake. And if we decide to, we can eat it peacefully, tasting and enjoying every bite without craving for more. or being dissatisfied because it isn't as good as we expected. As we diminish our attachment, life becomes more interesting because we're able to open up to what's happening in each moment. For example, rather than wishing we're with the people to whom we're attached, we'll appreciate being with whomever we're spending time with at present. And instead of being attached to our physical appearance and consequently feeling constant dissatisfaction with how we look, we'll simply do what's needed to keep our body healthy and clean, and we'll be satisfied with how we look. So it's really counterintuitive, isn't it? That it's attachment that cheats us of enjoyments, of pleasure, of just enjoying the little things. So let's have a look how attachment cheats us. So number one, it's uncertain that our desires will be fulfilled. Even if we follow them, our desires may not be fulfilled. You know, we put in all that effort to get whatever it is, and often it's a disappointment. It's not as good as we expected. We might finally get the girl or the boy of our dreams, and then it turns out they're a bit of a bogan. You know, they've got a really coarse sense of humor or something, and we're like, oh, hang on a second. Or we might finally hook up with a person that we want to, and then we find out we've got totally different taste in music. Or we just get bored. So, you know, our desires, even if we get the thing, may not be fulfilled. I remember going to Melbourne and going down Ackland Street to eat cake because it's famous for that, and it all looks fantastic in the windows. Oh my gosh. And then, you know, we bought 5 or 6 different pieces of cake, and I was eating them. We went down to the beach to eat them, and I'm just thinking in my mind, it's a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes. I was thinking, this is really tasteless. All of these cakes, they look beautiful and different, but they all just taste the same, like kind of like cardboard, you know, foam cake with a bit of spray on cream. They don't taste how they look. Anyway, I have a theory about that. I think it was because just about all of those shops now are Chinese owned, and they're not owned by their owners. And so all of the Chinese tourists that were coming in wouldn't have known anyway what the difference between this and that cake was. So they just made generic cakes and prettied them up in different ways because they didn't taste like the cake of my childhood. Anyway, that's an aside. So it takes us to this next one, that the object is illusory. So our craving propels us to the object, and when we're anticipating it, it feels it's great, can't wait. But once we get it, it's almost like more trouble than it's worth. The object seems to have somehow changed. So then we're not happy with what we want. So then we've got to get more. Maybe we get one of each flavour, or collect the set. Buy another cake. So people who are on a diet, I think one of my friends who was on a diet was saying, when we first start eating something delicious like cake, it's only the first 3 bites that taste good. The first one, and then the second and third are kind of okay. By the 4th bite, it's just bland because all of the excitement of our taste buds is gone. So we think that's a problem with the cake, and then we want another cake. We don't recognize that it's the process. So the object's illusory. It's like this mirage that we're always chasing, and we think it's there, out there. The other negative minds arise, like I mentioned before, the anger, possessiveness, insecurity, worry that someone will scratch it and knock it. So one lady said to me that, you know, when you get a new car, you've been driving around in this old bomb of a car for ages, and you're quite comfortable in it. Then you're very excited about getting a new car, and you get brand spanking new, wonderful, and then the first person that gets in the car slams the door. It's like, wait, just do it, close it gently. And then you can finally relax once it's got its first scratch. So it's kind of like the expectations, everything that we build up in our mind now has become a little bit more realistic, and now we can relax about it. But if we don't, it might get its first scratch. It might be that the grandkids or someone gave it its first scratch, and then now suddenly we find ourselves yelling at them, yelling at the ones we love for a car. It happens, doesn't it? Or in a relationship, all the other negative minds arise where it's like, who are they talking to? And the insecurities, maybe they're better than me, maybe I'll lose them. So where's the enjoyment now of that person? The enjoyment is gone. The time that we enjoyed being together is now ruined. And then the object may not last. It's impermanent. Well, the cake, it's finished. The car, it's scratched. The phone needs an upgrade. The house, we lost the house. Can't pay the mortgage. All of that suffering we think is a problem out there, somehow an aberration. But actually it comes with those things because it's the attachment. It's the rest of the story. So I experienced this. It was really sad when my beautiful pussycat died. And, you know, I loved my cat, and I thought, I've in my mind, I'm not attached. It's not a problem. But I forgot impermanence. I forgot that one day the cat will die, and then I'll be devastated. As they say, captured by impermanence. And so then there was a lot of suffering that came. I'd just forgotten that bit. Our attachment, if we follow attachment, leads to unskillful actions. We have regrettable incidents, emotional outbursts. You know, Eddie pointed out one day, you know, how come criminals end up in prison? How come thieves end up in prison? When they're stealing, they're not thinking, I'm going to go to prison. They're thinking, I'll get away with it. I want this thing so much that I'm willing to risk all of this. And it's just an aberration, that bit about getting caught and going to prison. So it's the attachment that drives you. Attachment leads you to separate out the consequences from the wanting to get that thing. There was another story too about a car of someone who, with their beautiful car, and they took their grandkids to the beach, and then as they were getting back into the car, he just said, I found myself yelling at my grandkids to not put sand in the car. And then I thought, what's the whole point of having a car? It's to do all these wonderful things with my grandkids, and what am I doing? I'm yelling at them. There's something wrong with this picture. So there, you know, it was actually his love for his kids that meant that he could overcome the attachment to the car. So that attachment cheats us of enjoying ordinary pleasures, just enjoying a day out with the grandkids. It's the attachment to the car, expecting the car to be perfect and last and all of those things, that means that we ruin the good things that we have. So it cheats us of friendships. It cheats us of enjoying just okay food because it's not perfect. How many weddings have been ruined by so many expectations that you just blow a gasket on the day? How many Christmas dinners have ended in tears because the expectations and the wish for it to be perfect, that's the mind of attachment. And then you forget, what's the dinner for? It's for sharing, for showing your love and your care for others. And we think that it's there to do with the perfect dinner, and so then our expectations get attached to that, and then when the dinner doesn't turn out right, then the day is ruined. It keeps us endlessly circling up and down, backwards and forwards, like a yo-yo, seeking this, oh, it wasn't that one, there's something wrong with it, this one, no, this one. So that's that drinking the salt water. And all of this means that we're distracted from making our life worthwhile. So we'll die in the middle of something. We'll be in the middle of something, and that'll be it. We won't be ready. And then many people, look, if they're lucky enough to know they're going to die soon, look back on their life. And how many of us look back with regret, going, oh, that kind of saying, no one comes to the end of their life and goes, oh, I wish I had gone to work more. I wish I had put in more hours at work. It's usually, I wish I had spent more time with those I love. I wish I had have actually done the things that really mattered and not just frittered it away on screen time. So you're getting an idea how it cheats us. Let's have a look at, well, what attachment is not. This beautiful picture of His Holiness with the Tibetan orphans. So it's not the object that's the problem. It's not the person we're having the relationship with that's the problem. It's not the grandkids or the children that are the problem. It's our craving for it to be in a certain way. That's what causes the suffering. So it doesn't mean that we have to get rid of our relationships. It doesn't mean that we can't care about anybody or that we can have a list on our bucket list. It doesn't mean that. It's the craving expectations that are the problem. It doesn't mean we have to give up our house or our job or chuck all of our stuff out. It doesn't mean that we have to go bland or indifferent. Actually, if we can get rid of all that craving and those expectations and projections, then we'll be free to have genuine love and care for others, to genuinely enjoy the company of others. It'll free us up. We mix up love and genuine affection. So-called love, desirous attachment love. And often in relationships, we get them so intertwined together, and then we go, okay, I can't bear this anymore. I'll never have a relationship again. Apart from the fact that that's not possible, we've got to be able to separate those two strands out, the desirous attachment and the real genuine, joyous relationship, the joyous affection. Yeah, so people have a habit of visualizing or building up a situation in their mind, and when it doesn't work out the way they pictured it, feel let down or upset. Some people blow a gasket. That's right. We just go up and down like that all the time. And each time where we get to a point where we could have a realization about that, we could get it. It was my expectations that I crashed. But we get it wrong. We go straight back to believing the appearances, because that's what attachment does. It thinks that the happiness comes from out there. So then we go, oh, that thing wasn't good enough. I'll get a better thing. And so again, we go around. So the love actually comes from within. It doesn't come from out there. That's a big difference about it. Also, not all desires as such bring suffering. So if the desire isn't exaggerated, isn't biased, isn't out of step with reality, it can be a positive desire, like the desire to help, the desire to become a doctor or a dentist or a teacher, or to pass your exams, the desire to become liberated or enlightened. They don't necessarily have to bring suffering. Actually, they can bring a lot of benefit and a lot of joy. We need ambition and passion, but it has to be realistic. Now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he has a desire not just for the liberation of the Tibetan people, but for all people. It's not biased. And the way he expresses his love and kindness isn't contingent on whether he gets a good result back. It's just a genuine sharing with others. So that how can we notice the difference? Well, with one, if the more realistic we are, the more naturally happy we are. So this is good, because if we get jaded and cynical, we start thinking that we're seeing things how they are now and the world is doomed and everything's terrible. And then we can kind of just switch off and go bland. That's a mistake. If we had all the pieces of the puzzle together, and if we were really interacting with others in a clear and genuine way, we would become more happy. We'd become more fulfilled by others' happiness, more genuinely interested and curious about others. All of that would become more confident. So the more realistic we are, the more happy we are. If we're unhappy, it's because we're out of step with reality. Genuine love is focused on others, on the well-being of others. So our heart expands to encompass others. Whereas desirous attachment, it's tunnel visioned and it's focused on me. So it collapses in like a black hole, less and less satisfaction. There's a very difference in the direction. So again, we can recognize that however unhappy we are, directly proportionate to how much attachment we have. And luckily, we can get rid of the attachment. So there was one other thing I wanted to say, that how can we recognize and cultivate genuine love without all the heartache, without that dagger through the heart? And we can kind of recognize it by getting a definition of what love is, genuine love or care, loving kindness. And it's basically wishing the other to be happy. We're happy when they're happy. So it's focused on the well-being of the others. And this is quite profound, because it means that we may not get on with a person, we may not even like them, but we can love them in this way. So think about it in terms of, say, with animals. Lots of people like all the cute fluffy pandas and koalas and things like that because we can cuddle them, what we get back from them. But if we genuinely love or care about animals, we'd also care about the well-being of the sharks and the crocodiles. And there are laws to protect them, aren't they? They're endangered species. And we can genuinely care. And many surfers, even if they're bitten by a shark, they don't want people to go out and kill the shark. They care about the shark. They have a genuine love for that shark. Doesn't mean you want to go hug them. Doesn't mean that you, want to spend your time with them. But that love is much deeper than the superficial relationships that come and go. So we can think about our exes relationship-wise. We may not ever want to see them again. We may not get on. We may not enjoy each other's company, but we can still love them, in that we still wish for their happiness. We're still happy when things go well for them. And that's much deeper. And it kind of shows how fickle our relationships are, actually, because they're just based on if we're feeling good or not. It's nothing to do with if we care for the person. So if we had genuine love, then something good happens to somebody that we love, even if we're feeling miserable. Physically, we might have the flu or something like that. We'll feel genuinely happy for them. All right, so I'll kind of come back to that one again in a moment. Let's have a look at the remedies for attachment. And we have 6 main remedies. And I'm going to go through them bit by bit, because you may not use all of them at once. Some will be for some instances, situations, some for others. They'll have different kind of relevance to you. Okay, so I'm just going to get my reading right. The first of the remedies Remember death and impermanence. Remember that things change and that our lifespan is limited. So what this basically means is don't sweat the small stuff. Remember that we don't know when we're going to die, and do we want to spend our last days niggling with someone about how they're not measuring up, or obsessing over this detail about the cooking or that detail about the cooking? Or do we really want to have genuine interaction? So you might have experienced this if someone close to you has had a terminal illness. The kind of conversations you have are quite different. You might just have a simple cup of tea together, but there's a real poignancy there because you know this might be the last cup of tea. So it doesn't matter if you didn't have any sugar in the tea. It's not about the tea, is it? So we don't obsess about those small things at the expense of the really big things that matter. So remembering death and impermanence puts our life and our relationships into perspective, the correct perspective. You know, our time with our family is limited. It's going to come to an end one day. So do we want to spoil it with worry and possessiveness and control issues? If we knew we just had a few more times to see each other, we would probably act completely differently. Also, whatever relationships that we have, they'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They'll all come to an end one way or another. And all three stages, beginning, middle, and end, we can do well, we can do graciously. It doesn't have to have a terrible ending. It can all be quite gracious. And if we recognize that it will come to an end, then just like when we're on a holiday, you know, we know it's going to come to an end, so we put in a whole lot of effort to do all of those things, even though we're a bit tired, even though we might have blisters, because we know that our time is limited, we want to make the most out of it. And it's the same with our relationships. The other thing, of course, with subtle impermanence, change, they say, you know, if you want a relationship to last, you look at your partner's parents, because one day they're going to be like them, at least how they look. And so they might be all saggy, baggy, and wrinkly and whatever. So what else do you like about them? There's got to be something else that you like about them, that you like to then, as our bodies deteriorate, our relationship gets stronger, that we love the person more. So it's a little bit confronting, but it's the perspective that changes everything. Really helps. It leads to the second one, recognizing the impurities of the body. So here's a little picture here with a sack with some grain coming out. So really what we are with our skin, we're a sack of guts in nice packaging that is naturally deteriorating continuously. And so many times, this is what attachment does. It just looks at the packaging, isn't it? Just likes the packaging. And we think about what's inside, under the skin, and we just, ugh. But that's nuts, isn't it? So the amount of repulsion that we have for what's inside the packaging and shows the amount of attachment we have for the appearance. It's really out of step with reality. The fact that we're repulsed by our blood and guts is crazy, because that's what keeps us alive, that whole process. It's, instead of looking at it as this is miraculous, how amazing, it all works without me having to make an appointment, without me having to organize it. My body functions, my teeth grew by themselves. All of these things, it is incredible, and yet we're repulsed by blood and guts. So that shows the degree of attachment that we have. So and then if we think that we are the packaging, then we have to continuously upkeep that packaging. What a waste of money. You know, how much do we spend on health, and how much as a culture do we spend on plastic surgery? There's the craziness of it all. One thing where we get this right with recognizing impermanence and the impurities of things is if someone gives you a bunch of flowers. Now, how come a bunch of flowers is such a special thing to give people? Why is it traditionally something that we offer to people? And it's because flowers, they're fleeting, aren't they? We know they're not going to last. But when someone gives us a bunch of flowers, we don't go, oh no, they're going to rot in 3 days. We just appreciate how beautiful they are now and how fragile and delicate, and we'll do what we can to look after them, and we really enjoy their beauty that day. And then 3-4 days later, they started to rot. The water in the vases got all stinky, but we don't go, oh no, what's happened to my flowers? They're all stinky, I can't bear it. My flowers have betrayed me. We just know that's the natural change. And we just chuck them out. So we have this insight right there in with flowers, and we just have to draw it the same conclusion with these other things. The same with our body. It's there for a fleeting amount of time. It means that we can do all of these incredible things, really appreciate it instead of worrying about how it looks or that it's going to deteriorate, because that's just in the nature. It's in the nature of change. I'll tell you another story about the impurities of the body. My friend, we lived on Gladstone Road in West End, a big, busy road, and she had a dog. And one day the dog ran out into Gladstone Road and just ran straight into a semi-trailer. He was a big, beefy dog, and he was just like, "You semi-trailer, get off my road." Boom. And my friend, she saw this. She saw the dog with a bit of blood and stuff on the road, and she just screamed and ran the other way. She couldn't bear it. Who else was with us? Was the neighbour who lived in the next door flat. And the neighbour ran straight to the dog. The semi-trailer had kind of swerved and the traffic had stopped. Picked up the dog, hailed a taxi. The taxi stopped. The neighbour said, "Go to the vet." Knew where the vet was, and all the way in the taxi on the way to the vet gave the dog mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And so there you have it. There's the difference between like genuine care, spontaneous care, which people will do, and attachment, unable to bear this other image of my dog. So of course, my friend, she was pretty devastated by her own response. And that's, we may not know that we have attachment until something like that happens. Our partner gets cancer and we don't want to be with them anymore. There's this incredible self-loathing and guilt that comes of you know, feeling really badly about ourselves. But it's because so much of our relationship is based on attachment, on the appearance, on just the one side of things. And when they change, when someone gets ill and their body's no longer attractive, it's really shocking and we're repulsed. So that whole process is to do with attachment. And then, you know, here we were thinking that we really loved and cared about the person, and it turns out we didn't at all. She didn't at all care about her dog. So it's a bit of a rude wake-up call. Okay, so the next one, viewing others as family. So this is a really good antidote when we're, especially for sexual objectification, when we put someone on a pedestal, or we idolize them. We think they're this perfect Superman or Superwoman. But you know how we are with our family? Usually with our family, we know their foibles, we know their good qualities, their bad qualities, and we give them a lot of slack. Somebody else might act out, and we're like, whoa, bad person. But our family, it's like, oh no, I understand why they did that, because they're having a hard time or this or that. So they're a lot more filled in as a human being. And they might drive us nuts, but we also love and care for them. And sometimes we know when to give them space. We know when to be with them. it's a much more balanced kind of relationship because we've had to learn to live with each other. And if we've managed to make it a healthy relationship, we can see the whole spectrum of the person. Whereas when we first have a relationship, or especially a romantic relationship, we idolize the person and just see that little section that we love. And then when they reveal the rest of themselves, we find it unbearable to the extent that we may even want to destroy them. So the way through this is to view others with affection like we do for our family. So our brother or sister, our parents, our children, that really wholehearted affection and care. The willingness that we have to respect them and forgive them. So I found, when I first had romantic relationships, that it takes several months and then you start getting to know the person. And there is this demarcation where you either start knowing the full human being or you break up because you see the rest of them and you don't really like them. So this is a way of actually being able to get to know a full human being, see them as an individual living being, not just your thing. Oh, then we've got meditate on emptiness. Well, this is a Buddhist term. So what this means is meditate or contemplate the fact that how the object exists and how it appears, they're different. How it first appears is not how it exists. Especially with attachment, how something first appears really nice and alluring, it's not the whole story. So we just need to bring this to mind, to relish wanting more, the bigger picture, the rest of the story, instead of kind of idealizing them and not wanting the rest, blocking it off. To just go, yep, it appears really nice, but there's going to be some other things that come along. So when they do, I'm not going to be shocked. We'll be able to have a realistic way of weighing it up. How we do this, say if we're purchasing something, we weigh the pros and cons. We think about different scenarios, and it's a way of getting more realistic. So we might have an ideal job that we want, and we might get that job, but then the circumstances change. And now we've got a different boss, and now we don't like the job anymore. Or something happened like with coronavirus and JobKeeper and all of those things. So when circumstances change, whether we want that job or not also changes. So we can preempt this by thinking of different scenarios now. And so the things that we get so obsessed about, play through some different scenarios and see, would you still be obsessed about it? And what that does is it makes us more realistic, and then we can make an informed decision. So one of the things, for instance, is say a perfect wedding. If we think a perfect wedding looks like this and there's no other way for it to be, the perfect dress and the photos and the food and all of the relatives and whatever, and then what happened to one of my friends, she was going to have this perfect wedding on the beach and then it rained. So either you can have a nervous breakdown and just have your wedding ruined, or you can think about what is a wedding about? If we have expectations and we're fixated on it's got to be like this and then it'll be perfect, we'll miss the big picture. Whereas the wedding isn't the thing out there, it's the relationship that we have with others. It's coming together and sharing an experience together. And we can do that in the rain or not. So we could make it a memorable wedding where we're all there in the rain and we say our vows and really mean it. Come, thick or thin, through good and bad, through rain or sunshine. and then it becomes really memorable. So the idea of a perfect wedding is totally different from actually making something really profound. So how do we lessen our expectations or our thinking that the object just exists in this one inflexible way? So attachment is how it thinks like that. So you're meditating on all the other possibilities, and that will take us to a deeper truth. The conviction and reality. So we can still seek happiness. We can still want good relationships, but we've got to seek happiness where it can be found. So if we want a perfect relationship that nothing ever goes wrong ever, and we are completely fulfilled, we have to have a relationship with a Buddha. And in fact, we have to become a Buddha. Because even if we had a relationship with a Buddha, if we weren't perfect, we're not going to be happy. So when you recognize, oh, even though I want a perfect partner who always thinks of my well-being, who does everything that I ask when I ask, all of these things, even if you had that, if you are not content in your heart, it won't be good enough. So recognizing this doesn't mean that then you give up on relationships and happiness forever. No. Recognizing this means, well, where can I find that perfect relationship? Where can I find that lasting happiness? It's got to be somewhere. Where is it? We cultivate it from within. We can attain that emotional freedom and liberation. We can attain Buddhahood, enlightenment, and then we can actually have perfect relationships and perfect happiness. Yes, it is possible, but it's not possible the way that we've been going about it at the moment. So that's this real confidence and conviction in reality, confidence in the Dharma. If we cultivate positive states of mind and activities, then happiness and satisfaction will be a natural result. We won't be able to avoid it. And yet what we've been doing is like drinking the salt water. It's never going to happen. So it doesn't mean to just give up on everything and become jaded. Completely the opposite. Go for it even harder, but go smarter. And one of the best ways to overcome attachment is to cultivate love. So I love this saying. Love is wanting the other person to be happy. Being in love is wanting the other person. So it's great, isn't it? And that's that difference in direction. Love is really focused outwards on others, on the well-being of people other than ourselves. And that opens our heart, and it means we're connected to others. Our happiness doubles. Being in love, wanting the other person, it's all about me. And, you know, when we're in love and it's all about me, what can I get? Then our happiness is hinged on that, on circumstances, on what happens to us, on all of that external stuff. And that's never enough. When our happiness is dependent on our care for them, they don't even have to be there anymore. We can still love them. We can still experience real joyousness in our heart. Okay, so here's a little bit now from Venerable Gyatso. Desire and love are not the same thing. Love is a positive emotion that we should cultivate. It is the pure wish for somebody else to be happy, whereas desire is the wish for oneself to be happy. The emotion of being in love is a mixture of desire and real love. And the main cause of the unhappiness associated with this condition is desire. When pain in your heart indicates that desire is manifesting, you should apply its antidote and turn your mind towards liberation and enlightenment. Cultivate detachment by first contemplating the folly of desire, its exaggeration, its projection and clinging, and then seeing the object of desire as it is in reality, a transient phenomenon that's empty of your projections. Buddha taught, oh, that's right. So then he also said this funny thing about this remembering death and impermanence and the impurities of the body. He says, when I was a medical student spending many hours each day dissecting human corpses, I was dismayed to realise that beautiful girls were beginning to appear to me as walking skeletons. Beneath the skin that beckoned to be touched and kissed, I saw yellow nodules of fat, red muscles, and white bones that dissipated my desire. Until I'd had a few drinks anyway. So you can see how they're really different in quality, this love and the desire. So I have a little poll that I'd like to run. Just going to stop the share for a moment and run the poll. So for those of you that can see the poll, fantastic. You can vote for as many things as you want. For those of you that can't see it, I'll read it out just as a way of doing a little summary. So what's the worst way attachment has cheated you of genuine happiness or love? Uncertain our desires will be fulfilled. After all that effort, it's not what we expected. The object is illusory. We get the object, but it changes. We get bored. We want an upgrade. Now we want the whole set. The satisfaction doesn't last. Oh no, it's broken. Someone took my beautiful thing. Other disturbing emotions arise, tormented by possessiveness, jealousy, anxiety, and worry. Leads to unskillful actions. Oh, thank goodness there was no social media when I was young. But seriously, we may destroy the ones we love or commit crimes or get what we want when we're addicted to, or just hope that we don't get caught and having that affair. It cheats us of small pleasures, the wedding ruined by expectations, the dinner party get together ruined by perfectionism in the kitchen. It keeps us endlessly circling. How much calmer do we feel in coronavirus lockdown with a simpler life? It's following all of those things, wasn't it? Life got so more and more and more hectic. And distracts us from making our life worthwhile. What percentage of each day do you spend on things that mean something to you? On something other than entertainment or chores? On being true to oneself? So it's just a way of really thinking about the disadvantages of attachment and how it kind of ruins our ability to enjoy things. It ruins our genuine, relationships, and how ironic that is. So I'll still leave the poll up for a moment, and I have a couple of things to read from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So Rinpoche says, loving yourself is fine, but it doesn't work if the method isn't right. The best way to really love yourself is to renounce each self-cherishing thought. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says, the best way to love yourself is to cherish others. The only practical way to be selfish is to cherish other beings. That's the practical way. Romantic obsession is different from sincere love. In becoming romantically obsessed, you hallucinate about the person you desire, and maybe that person hallucinates about you too. But it's important to try not to be caught up in that hallucinated view, and to look at the person with a different view, the view of wisdom and compassion. Less desire means more freedom. As desire lessens, the space for genuine love expands. So it's nice, isn't it? I really hope that you remember that. Now let's see, everybody's voted, and let's end the polling and share the results. All right, what do we have? The clear winner. Oh, good. So you've taken the essence of this whole talk, how desire keeps us endlessly circling, and how much calmer do we feel in coronavirus lockdown with a simpler life. And it distracts us from making our life worthwhile. That's right. That's the real essence of it. All the other ones we can kind of see, yep. But those two, the long-term disastrous results. So I think you've really got it there. That's great. Okay, so in summary, desirous attachment focuses inward, is tunnel vision. Genuine affection expands our heart to others. Satisfaction doesn't come from following the craving, like drinking the salt water, but from cultivating contentment. In our mind, that thought, what I have is enough. Might not be perfect, but it's enough. And if we're free from attachment, then we're free to really enjoy our life. So it is something to look forward to. This one is one of the most difficult ones to get, just because when desire first arises, it feels okay, it feels a good thing. So it takes a lot of training, but at least we can start lessening it now and at least try and notice that process and then put in place whatever antidote you can at the time. So these self-reflection sheets, there's the worksheet on attachment to fill in. So there's just a few lines for each question. So, you know, you can just jot down what you can just to get it started. There is at the back the meditations, the meditation on offering your body as the 4 elements. It's a way of really practicing generosity and also of being able to let go of our attachment to our body. It's a really beautiful meditation. It gives you a lot of energy and inspiration, and it's a way of practicing love. So even if we cannot see anybody, and even if we're socially isolated, in our heart expands. So it'll give you a lot of joyousness in your heart. The TV homework, well, there's Botched and Botched Up Bodies, which is the English version and actually a lot more insightful. But I really love them because they're so blatant about how following that external attachment, the external object, just leads to more suffering and more complications. And it's so obvious that you can see that process. Plus it's full of gory details, which is just great fun. There's a few other ones. Body Bazaar, that's also a great TV show because it shows people with really significant malformations and difficulties with their body and conjoined twins and all sorts of things, and these people living really fulfilled lives. It's quite humbling. You've got cases from all around the world. Bridezillas, well, that one's self-explanatory and it's on at the moment, and I can only watch about 5 minutes and I'm done. But in terms of expectations and just fixating on those external things and how it brings so much unhappiness, again, it can bust that cycle for us. Banged Up Abroad, similar. All these people usually doing drug running, whatever, thinking that it'll be okay, it'll be great, and then never expecting to end up in prison. And ironically, then being stuck in prison, having quite a life transformation. So I find those really inspiring. Wife Swap USA, that's another great one. Whichever wife spot you can get across, it's excellent for relationships. Okay, and next week we're going to look at how anxiety reveals our deepest values, what matters to us, and how we can listen to the wisdom in anxiety. And the reason why we're talking about anxiety next week is that one of the main results of attachment is anxiety. So we don't necessarily recognize we have attachment, except kind of sideways by recognizing, wow, I'm riven with worry, uptight, anxiety. So it's a sure indicator that attachment is there working along in the background. So we'll have a look at how to deal with the anxiety. So let's just do a dedication. Thank you so much for coming along and spending your time like this. It's a very good investment as a human being in your own lasting happiness, and then the kind of happiness and joy that you can share with others and contribute to others. So dedicate your good intentions and your effort to being able to really achieve lasting happiness for yourself and others. And to do that, you turn in your mind to look within, to cultivate those positive states of mind that result in happiness, result in contentment, not dependent on external things. So all the very best. Thank you. I hope to see you next week.